What's up, guys? Mark back here with yet another video, and on today's show I want to kind of talk about DXOMark. And if you're in the market for a lens or a camera or something like that, how you might be able to use DXOMark in order to find a really nice lens camera combo, something like that, right? First thing I want to point out is that DXOMark is not perfect. They have a certain set of testing methodology that doesn't always incorporate every single facet of a lens or a camera. First of all, they don't even take into account build quality. What they are solely focusing on is how many perceived megapixels a lens can reproduce and how well a sensor performs in combination with certain lenses. All of these things are solely based on the performance, not necessarily build quality, reliability, warranty, focal length, anything that you might enjoy personally. It doesn't take that into account. This is strictly statistical in nature based on performance. So a little bit about how DXOMark does what it does. First of all, right here on their About page, you can read what does DXOMark score for lenses with camera show, okay? DXOMark scores show the amount of information captured by the lens for a given camera, how well the lens and camera perform together. DXOMark score does not show the intrinsic quality of the camera sensor's performance under high light conditions. So there are some things that they do capture and record and then incorporate that into their score, and there are some things that they leave out and do not incorporate into their score. So it's not a perfect system. Here's the reason why I lend at least some weight to DXOMark where, some other people may not. What they're doing is they're testing these lenses and these sensors against a set of standards that is primarily based on print. If these images captured with this lens or this sensor, if you were going to print them out, how well would it do? How well would it hold up in a printing scenario? Most people these days don't print much. Granted, there is a nice segment of the population that does still print. The higher the score that you can get, at least this is my reasoning, the higher the score that you can get on DXOMark, the better that it's going to look not only in print, but also on the internet, on Facebook, on social media. Because if it can stand up to rigorous printing and still maintain a high level of detail, a high level of resolution, a higher megapixel count, whatever the case may be, it's probably going to look really good on screen. For lenses, this is how I generally try and pick lenses. As a matter of fact, I was lens shopping just last night, and I kind of wanted to see how that brand new Sigma 30mm f1.4 contemporary lens actually stood up against some of the other lenses in the Sony line that I have either A, used, or B, own. So I'm going to choose lenses, and then I'm going to choose Sony, and down here in advanced filters, I'm going to say it's going to be mounted on an A6000. They have not tested the A6300, and they have also not tested the A6500. So the A6000 is going to be the closest for me. And then I am also going to say Sony E-mount. What we're doing here is we are going to look at Sony lenses, right? And let's just say I'm actually going to swap from Sony lenses, and I'm just going to swap to any brand. I generally look at the sharpness. That's what I generally look at. The DXOMark score, it's basically an overall score with everything in combination kind of factored together. But the sharpness is what I generally look for because I want the higher amount of lines of resolution. And that generally gives you a really good baseline of how well that lens is going to perform in terms of, is it soft or is it sharp? So on the A6000, the Sigma 30mm f1.4 DCD-in contemporary Sony E-mount lens does in fact have the highest DXOMark score for the A6000 and also is tied for sharpness with the Sigma 60mm f2.8 DN art lens. Both of these lenses are extremely inexpensive, and they both kind of sit right around my Sony EF or 50mm f 1.8 lens. I own that lens, and I love that lens. It is a fantastic performer. That lens, according to DXOMark, got a score of about 13. The only other lens that even gets close to the Sony E50mm f 1.8 in terms of sharpness is concerned is a $1,000 Zeiss Planar Tuit 1.8. $1,000. So above that lens, for $239 you can get the Sigma 60mm. For $300 roughly you can get the Sony E-mount 50mm f 1.8, or you can get that new DN contemporary Sigma lens 30mm for roughly $340. But this particular scenario right here for me says that in terms of sharpness alone, now this doesn't, again, it doesn't include build quality, coatings, anti-flaring, it doesn't include any of this stuff, but it does include distortion, vignetting, the actual transmission of light via T-stops, and chromatic aberration. So when you finally look at a lens, and I'm using the 50mm f1.8 as my baseline. So when I look at this lens and then I compare the Sigma, it gets 4 points higher in the DXOMark score, the overall score. It gets 3 points higher in the sharpness score. And in the distortion, vignetting, transmission, especially the transmission, because this is what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for a faster lens. And right now, the Sigma 30mm f1.4 is the fastest prime lens currently available for the Sony E-mount line. Which is kind of sad because it's not even an official first-party Sony lens. What's even more sad is the fact that it only costs $340. I'm going to reiterate one point, is that you're basically trying to compare a $340 lens to, say, like a $1,000 lens, like a Carl Zeiss. Everyone sweats Carl Zeiss, and for good reason. They make good quality products. They use really nice coatings. They do a lot of extra things. But here's my thinking. This is my logic. I can buy roughly 3 of those lenses. I happened to pick mine up last night. I picked up the Sony 30mm 1.4 for about $270. I had a $50 gift card. I applied it. So it only costs, in real money to me, about $279. I can buy roughly 3 or 4 of those lenses for the cost of one of the Carl Zeiss Tuit lenses. Okay? Or I could buy roughly the same amount if I wanted to compare it to the Sony Carl Zeiss Sonar 24mm f1.8. And it gets a better DXOMark score both in overall and in sharpness. So if you guys are looking to save a little bit of money and you are confused about potentially what type of lenses that you're going to be looking for, look at DXOMark to get a general idea of where it sits. And then take those particular recommendations, go and read reviews, get on Flickr.com and put in a search term for the lens that you're looking at and look through the different files that people are uploading. See what other people are able to accomplish with those lenses based on those specs. Find what you can find, how that lens is going to perform with the particular camera that you're going to be using it on. These are really simple steps and tools to help you find the best lens in the correct focal range in an acceptable sharpness level. Without a whole lot of distortion, without a whole lot of vignetting, you'll be able to find out how it compares as far as how well it's going to transmit light. And I thought that maybe you guys would want to see how I go through a process of determining what kind of lens that I'm particularly looking at. Because to be perfectly honest, anyone that's shooting on the E-mount APS-C line were starved for fast lenses. So that's all I've got for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, give it a thumbs down. It's all the same to me. At any rate, thanks again for stopping here and hanging out with me today. I'm your host, Mark Puckett, and I'll see you guys again next time. Peace out.